Welcome to UberCube, the podcast where we discuss all things cube, but with refreshments. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka UberBear, and tonight I'm joined by our special guest,
Chris Moore, aka Sammich.
Yeah, and so we've got a really cool episode lined up for you tonight where we're going to talk about complex signpost within our Peasant environment that belongs to our good friend here, Sammich, that's going up Wednesday, May 31st for CubeCon, considered to be featured. And then we're going to talk about advanced signpost within UberBear's Artifact Cube, which is going to go up on Friday, the June 2nd for the final round. I'd like to think the final form boss fight, right?
That's right.
All right. So before we go any further down this rabbit hole, we're going to do the thing that we always do here at UberCube. We're going to enjoy our libations of the show. Chris, you're our guest this evening. What are you having?
Well, I'm having a Guinness Extra Stout. I hear Stu having it all the time when they're on here, so figured I'd be like him.
It's a staple. It's a staple. All right. And I am having Elysian Space Dust IPA. Let's go ahead and crack them open and get to the topic. All right. So as we had mentioned, both UberBear's Artifact Cube and Sammich's Peasant Cube are up for contention starting next week by the time this episode comes out. Chris's Peasant Cube will be coming out on May 31st.
Yep.
And then mine will be, as we said, the very final vote for CubeCon 2023. Where,
man, save the best for last. That's fine.
Yeah, well, Team UberCube will be there in Madison, Wisconsin from October the 19th to the 22nd.
Whenever it ends.
Yes. Yeah. And even so, we'd really like you guys to seek us out. We'll be hanging out. Cube and even after hours. Cube Delirium will be in full effect. Absolutely. It is the best 4 days of magic, as Dr. Richard Garfield intended, and it's just absolutely amazing. We're excited that our good friend here.
Yeah, I can't wait. I wasn't able to make it last year. Can't look forward to this year.
So either way, despite the outcome, we are super hype. Also, I'm very blessed to have UberBear's Horror Cube that has been selected to be a featured cube at the event, as well as our good friend May, the other host of the show. She's been fortunate enough to have her fake cube as a...
Absolutely. Congratulations to you both. That is amazing.
So man, and her cube is gorgeous. World renowned. Yeah, we already talked about this. Milton Bradley's picking it up.
I love it. It's a great cube. It's really awesome. I love hearing her talk about it. It's fantastic.
Oh, you can just hear the joy in her voice when she's talking about that cube. It's exciting. All right, so let's get to the point. So what we're going to talk about in these two particular environments are very specific cards that represent our favorite signpost within the environment. So we're going to start out with Chris, who's going to kind of go over and talk about his Peasant Cube. And as we talk about these cards, they will be located both within the show notes, and then feel free to scryfall as we move along. We're going to do our best to cover these, but some of these, as in modern Magic, they have gotten wordy on top of words. So forgive us as we pile through these. Chris, would you like to take it away from here, please?
Yeah, I just want to start off by saying my favorite colors in Magic are the blue, the black, and the green. And the favorite archetype that I did when I was putting together this Peasant Cube was going to be a graveyard synergy card. And one card that stood out for me was Worm Harvest, which I'll read it to y'all. It's 2 and 3 hybrid black-green mana, so a total of 5 mana value. And it's a sorcery, and you put a black-green worm creature token on the battlefield for each land card in your graveyard. It also has the ability of Retrace, meaning you cast it from your graveyard if you discard a land card in addition to paying its mana cost. So I love this card. I love everything about it. I added this into the cube as a signpost that there's going to be some sort of graveyard synergies that go in here. And it also goes along with another card. They're not exactly the same, but Spider Spawning is another one that's in there. But here we're here to talk about Worm Harvest. And the reason is it's a little bit of a complex strategy. It works really well with the graveyard. It works well with self-mill, works good with reanimator, works good with token strategies. So these are all things that I really enjoy with this. And Anthony, what do you think
so
about
the
it?
reason why we picked this card is not only have I been beaten by this card numerous times in your cube environment, but it's one of those type of cards that not only represents a signpost, but it also cross-pollinates with a lot of other archetypes embedded within the cube. And this is my favorite type of signpost, very much like we talked about recently with Harmonic Prodigy in our previous episode, where it had prowess, so it had that spells matters attributes to it, or non-creature matters rather, but it also had that intricacy of that secondary effect where it entwined itself with your shamans and your wizards. Well, much like that Worm Harvest, really signals that you can do a lands matters type of strategy. You can go into some graveyard shenanigans, as said. It really pulls into that self-mill type strategy. And then at the end of the day, you can even do token strategies with overrun effects in this environment. It gives a lot of avenues. It doesn't put your drafters on rails. You can make 5 to 10 different decks with the singular signpost, right? This card is very advanced, can go a lot of different. It's malleable, is what I like about this card.
And I like this this kind of strategy so much. I even built my own like shard cube. I built a Sultai cube that's a 180 card cube that's built solely around doing shenanigans with the graveyard,
which we'll talk about in a future episode because I'm excited to talk about that card. That is the one cube that only time I have actually won in his graveyard 180 is when he had a card that he had to take out because I broke it. I think it was a Phyrexian Reclamation. After I broke that card, he removed it, and since then I have never won a match again. That is a very technical cube. And what I like about that technicality of that cube, you can very much feel it embedded within his Peasant cube. And mind you, this cube is foiled out, blingy, burned your eyeballs while playing it. Absolutely gorgeous cube. Love this cube. Sammich's Peasant Cube, highly recommend everybody votes for that when it comes up. Yeah, it is bonkers. And so, Chris, if I were going to build a Worm Harvest deck, in your opinion, if I was trying to go, how many lands would you recommend a drafter really run in this type of deck? That was the one question that popped in my mind.
I've run anywhere from 18, 19, sometimes even 20, depending on what you have in the deck. You want a lot more. You want more lands normally than you would in a regular deck. Some lands run even 16, some run 15, but you don't want to do that in this kind of deck. You really want to run more lands. I usually run 18 or 19.
And would you exceed your 40 in this one when you're saying that, or are you capping at 40?
No, I'm capping at 40, and I do it that way because you're running a lot of other cards that are going to put stuff in the yard. You want to draft things highly, like Stitcher Supplier is an example. We'll start there.
Yeah.
It's a 1/1 zombie for 1 black mana value, and when it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. And when it dies, mill 3 cards. So this little 1/1 is very useful for this type of deck because it just puts stuff in the yard for you. There's another one. There's another one on the screen, Anthony, that you might want to mention.
Yeah, this one here is really great because I don't think you can actually see what he's doing. It's Excavation Mole. Mm-hmm. And for 2 colorless and 1 green, you get a creature mole, which is fantastic, right? Trample. When Excavation Mole enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and it's a 3/3. It makes molehills out of mountains. That's a fantastic flavor. That is a fantastic favorite flavor.
It's very synergistic with the cube, but it also just has great flavor text.
And it really ties into that Worm Harvest type of theme that you're pulling in here. For any of the Peasant cubers out there, Worm Harvest is a very advanced strategy. It's very tactile. That's what I love about this. You can do a lot with it. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the one in the middle here, Chris, that's really a payoff. If I were doing this strategy, what would I get?
Yes, Sir Conrad is a good one. He's a 5/4 legendary human knight, 3 colorless and 2 black mana value. When another creature dies or a creature card is put in the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. And that's great. That works really well with the aristocrats and everything like that. But the other one is each pay 1 and a black, and each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So it works really well to help mill yourself.
Right. It's less the Worm Harvest, but it's a tie that binds that, so you can get a secondary effect, so you're not completely relying on those insects that Worm Harvest.
Because you can put Worm Harvest in an aristocrat's deck with something like Sir Conrad, because it works really well, because you want things to die, you want things to go to your graveyard, and you'll make more tokens that way, so you'll get more hits from your from that kind of stuff.
So you can see where all this is like a web, right? Yes. That's what I like about these linchpins. So using Worm Harvest, you can see even Stitcher Supplier in that aristocrats concept that you're talking about. You do want that to die. Mm-hmm. So you're not only pinging them for life while you're milling to your strategy. It's just, that's why this one's very advanced. It's not, I don't even think this is fragile. I think this is a very resilient.
It is.
Because it has a lot of avenues, right? You were talking to me, we were talking pre-gaming recently, and he was talking about Lab Man, and we were having a side discussion about whether or not he should add Laboratory Maniac.
Because he can go in now. He does have an uncommon printing.
But the one fallout with that is, if you lean too heavily in that, the only real support cards you had were
like necromancy, makeshift mannequin, something to bring it back in case you mill it. Yes, you have your reanimation effects like reanimate, animate dead, and things like that. But it's nice to have them at instant speed. But it makes it kind of tough. There's not a lot of tutors in the Peasant Cube. That makes it kind of tough too. So it's not as good in this environment, in my opinion. gone back and forth up putting it in.
That's why I like Worm Harvest, allowing you to be agile. You don't have to really lean in so much like a Lab Man. Lab Man's fantastic, but it's fragile without those fast reclaim effects, right? Whereas that Worm Harvest gets you value from the tokens.
So you don't have to mill your entire deck to get value.
Right? Exactly. So it even gives you like a halfway point win con, even if you were doing a Lab Man strategy or a Sir Conrad strategy.
If you get 4 or 5 lands in your graveyard, and you keep drawing lands because you put like 18 lands in your deck, you're going to get a lot of value out of this thing. You just eventually can overrun the board.
Yeah, that retrace capability will allow it just to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So
and while in like a more powerful environment, no, Worm Harvest is not going to do much. But in this one, it does a lot. It actually is a very good card in this cube.
Another card, there's some support cards here, right?
Absolutely.
And they lean into, this is a very Sultai type of strategy. If it could be Dimir. I mean, this could be technically Dimir. This technically could be
Golgari.
Golgari. But if you wanted to go Sultai, you get a little bit bigger suite of utility cards. Yes. What are some of these that we can talk about?
Yeah, your draw discard spells are going to help you out a lot here. Things like Frantic Search being one of the better ones. Draw 2, discard 2, untap 3 lands. Instant for 2 and a blue. And we also have some new ones, a fairly new one, Thirst for Discovery, that I've added to this because it's been very good. An instant speed, 2 and a blue, draw 3, discard 2 unless you discard a basic land. Well, that right there says, I'm going to help Worm Harvest out right there. You can even discard 2 lands. You don't have to discard 1 land. You can choose to discard 2. It's up to you.
And then you got Scattered Thoughts. For 3 colorless and 1 blue. You get an instant. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put 2 of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So you can see how this tie that binds these graveyard synergies plays into all these unique cards we talked about for payoffs, like the Sir Conrads. But Worm Harvest gets value add off of all these, and it gives you so many avenues as a drafter. That's what I'm talking about. This is a very agile Signpost, right? It's complex, though. Not everybody's going to see this because it is scary to mill your deck. Everybody, I mean, new players are very adverse to this idea. They're not feeling it. No more than the discard, right? We talked about in our discard episode. It takes a little bit of.
Frantic Search is the scary card for a new player. They do not understand the power that card has, and that's that's not a lot of people realize when they're starting out. I would also like to add things that might not be in the show notes, and you might want to add them in later. I don't know. But the dredge spells work really well here, and I do have a couple of them in there. You can't run Golgari Grave Troll.
Yeah, the Inkweed, right?
We have the Stinkweed.
Stinkweed.
We also have Dark Blast in there as well.
Right.
Just as a way to add a little bit more ways to fill the graveyard,
And then we talked about, so while you're doing this self-mill strategy with the Worm Harvest, you may lose a few of your haymakers, right? And you want to reclaim them. So stuff like Necromancy, which will be in the show notes, Reanimate will be in the show notes. So we'll talk about Reanimate because this is a very powerful card. It's one of the best ones. It will protect you. It's not the instant speed that you can do with the Necromancy, but Reanimate for 1 swamp, you get a sorcery. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. It's a way of just stopping from losing your creatures that you did not want to lose. And or something like your Sir Conrads where you want to keep your engine going. Or in this case, maybe your Blood Artist or things like that.
Yeah, it helps you get back your, I don't know, whatever. You can also bring back something big. There's tons of big stuff in there too that you can bring back. Because, like I said, this Worm Harvest deck plays really well into the reanimation that's in there.
You've got those 2 cycling creatures, the black one and the...
They might be in my Sultai Cube now. I'm thinking about it.
You've moved them?
At least, no. I think one of them actually is in there. The big 11/11 cycler that puts a trample counter.
Yeah, I'll look it up. We'll look up the name. It eludes us right now at this time. But what's so interesting is...
Rex.
Yeah, that's right. And this has got a real tie-in. Here's another card that's actually come out recently. We're only going to read the saga side of it, but it was the Modern Age for 1 colorless and 1 island or 1 blue. You get chapter 1, draw a card, then discard a card. Then chapter 2, draw a card, then discard a card. And then 3, you exile and you return it.
You get a 2/3 flyer, basically. Yeah, it comes out pretty good. For a 2 mana common, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. And it really gets that whole, you want to have that looting type effects, or rummaging and looting is what's really good for this.
They help. And you can back those up also. Green, this is where green can come in as well. Regrowth effects are very good in this cube, in this type of deck, where you have actual regrowth, where, because it's been uncommon, I think, forever. Regrowth says, return target card from your graveyard to your hand for 1 green and 1 colorless. And then there's also Bala Ged Recovery, which is your modal double-faced card, your MDFC, which does the same thing, but it's a land in the back, but it might cost 3, I think. I think it costs 2 and a green.
Yeah, so you can see where all these cards, when you're running a strategy, a self-mill strategy, or something like Worm Harvest, you want to protect your components, right? Your key pieces. So the signpost is there, but you want to keep your action going on your Worm Harvest, and maybe you can't retrace it. You want to find a way to get it back.
Yes.
So something like Regrowth would allow you to reclaim it and then continue to push the action. So I'm in love with Worm Harvest. It is one of the most advanced strategies within a peasant environment. I'm sure there are others, but yeah. So as we said before, Chris's, aka Sammich's Peasant Cube, will be going up for a CubeCon vote, right?
Yes, on Wednesday, that's the 31st. Yeah,
Yes.
31st, Wednesday, the 31st. So I'd appreciate your vote. It's be a big help.
He's worked really hard on this. It's totally foiled out. Like I said, it'll burn your retinas while playing Magic the Gathering. It's pretty great. And then even if, right, so there's a lot of fierce competition. When I say fierce, what I mean is there's a lot of great competition. So, and even in my pod, there's some absolutely amazing cubes, as there is in Chris's pod, right? So whoever wins, no matter how the outcome comes, in all truth, we'll still be happy because we just won a cube. We're taking this opportunity to highlight some cards and then do the thing that we do, right? But worst case scenario, come play Cube with us right at CubeCon. Absolutely. Come find us. Reach out to us. Look us up on the Discord. Find us on Twitter, etc. And we'll give you our geolocation, because I assure you, you will be able to find us where we'll be sitting around playing in a Home 2 Suites lobby in the middle of the night, delirious from Magic the Gathering. You will see the table, and it's huge. So, anyways, no matter the outcome, we're here for fun. That's what Cube's all about. Absolutely. And now we're going to move over to Artifact Cube, which I am going up for on June the 2nd. Like I said, that final vote, when everybody's been cubed voted out, here comes Anthony. And I'm in with a fine suite of artifact enchantment cubes. It's wonderful to see that genre of cube developing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sitting amongst some amazing cubes, right?
Fantastic.
And what I would really like to talk about in mine is a featured card. Same we did with Chris's with Worm Harvest. I've got one, and it's one of my interesting, maybe not the winning. I won't go so far as winning. I'm going to say just simply fascinating Magic card that came out. What is that? Modern Horizons?
I believe that's Modern. If you scroll down, Modern Horizons 2, I believe.
I believe so. Yeah. And it's Scrapyard Recombiner. For 3 colors, you get an artifact creature construct, Modular 2. And modulars, this creature enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it. When it dies, you may put a 1/1 counter on target artifact creature. What's really neat about this one, too, is you can sacrifice an artifact, and then you search your library for a construct card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So, as one might imagine, in a artifact-centric cube, such as mine, 360, Uberbear's Artifact Cube, I have 28 constructs. And not constructs, not to confuse them, but constructs. Right? So what's so neat about this card? Chris, would you mind talking about these components?
Yeah, it works. He has a lot of modular in that cube, so it works really well with that. He's got a lot of artifacts, creatures, and believe they're mostly white and red that have the modular, and of course colorless. Being that they're modular, they also work really well with sacrifice synergies. It also works with construct synergies, which works really well to put them into your hand to cast later, of course.
Right. And so kind of like what we talked about with Worm Harvest, and it had that flexibility, right? That agility to move around different archetypes, as does this particular card. Scrapyard Recombiner has that ability to fit into multiple themes. And that's what I think when I see a Signpost card, it's not so linear. That's what makes it interesting to me, right? When it has the ability to spread across multiple avenues. And it could do a lot of things. So like you said, it could support modular, sacrifice, which modular kind of falls into that Boros-ish with some color splash, right? And then the sacrifice gets into the Rakdos type of environment. And then when you go into the constructs, you go across all the Gear Hulks, etc., right?
Yes.
And you get some really powerful ones. And we're going to talk about some of these constructs of the 28 that are new and interesting that you can grab. Chris, would you mind taking on this first one? It's
yeah,
bonkers.
This one's actually very cool. I like this new one. Filigree Vector for 3 and a white, so 4 total mana value. You get a Phyrexian Construct. That's the important part. When Filigree Vector enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of any number of target creatures, and a charge counter on each of any number of target artifacts. And then you can pay, I believe that's 1, and then sacrifice another artifact and proliferate, which means you can pick anything with a counter on it and add another one.
You can see where if you had those two cards in tandem, that you got some serious modular nonsense going on.
This is actually a card before last night I really didn't even know existed because, they're putting out 10,000 cards a month. So it's hard to keep track of everything.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
But, they showed it to me, and I have a new Naya cube, and I'm like, that's pretty good. I might have to go in there.
So, as I said, we've got the 5 Gear Hulks that can also be grabbed by this card, right? We've got Cataclysmic Gear Hulk. We've got Combustible Gear Hulk. We've got Verderus Gear Hulk. We've got Torrential Gear Hulk. And we have Noxious Gear Hulk. All of those will be included in the show notes, but those are my Titan cycle. As a designer, I always have this thing where I like to have a Titan cycle. And that's not true in all of my cubes, but I like to have the one completed suite of the thing, right? It's kind of like when I'm referring to the Titans, I'm referring back to the old school Sun Titans and Primeval Titans, right?
The Giants.
But the Giants. So in this subgroup, in my cube, this is my quote unquote Giants. One that came out in the next 2 will come out in the Brothers War. The first one is Platoon Dispenser. For 5 colorless, you get an artifact creature, Construct. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. Then you can also play 3 colorless and 1 plains, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact token. And it has that really cool unearth feature, right? For 2 colorless and 2 plains, you can unearth it, and it's a 4/6. Yep, this is a really powerful card.
I've been destroyed by this card.
Yes.
In your cube, yes.
So you can see where something like Scrapyard Recombiner could be used to fetch out this card.
Absolutely.
And also push forward your other strategies as you do modular, etc. That's what I love about that. It's back to that glue. That's what I'm looking for here. With that Worm Harvest and with that Scrapyard Recombiner, these are kind of, even though there's your advanced signpost within your environments, they're the glue that pulls so many other archetypes into them. And it gives... I'm a firm believer in not putting your drafters on rails. What do you think about that, Chris?
Oh, I totally agree. Everyone needs to be able to do... I like to have cards that will cross-pollinate with each other, where you can run them in multiple decks. This doesn't just go in that one deck. And yes, you're going to have to run those sometimes, but for the most part, you want to have the least amount of those possible. You want to have cards that can go in every deck. Take like a lightning bolt. Any deck with red wants a lightning bolt. It's not just the mono red deck. So I want cards like that can go pretty much anywhere. And that's what I'm looking for when I look at cards, to try to decide what goes in there. Can they all kind of weave together to form something where someone doesn't have to just run this in this one deck?
And that it's unique enough that it's not homogenous within the environment. Yes. And that's what makes it difficult, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're finding these cards, you want them to connect legs, but also to be standalone. That's where it gets really hard as a curator to pick out your certain cards. And that's why I wanted to talk about these 2 very advanced cards with these advanced strategies. Chris, would you mind taking on this next one to the right of Platoon Dispenser?
Yeah, it's only got 3 million words on it. So here we go. Surge Engine. Surge Engine, it's a 2 mana value artifact creature construct from Brothers War. It's a 3/2 with Defender. For 1, it has 3 different abilities on it. For 1 blue, Surge Engine loses Defender and gains this creature can't be blocked. So that's kind of cool. And then 2 and a blue, Surge Engine becomes blue and has base power and toughness 5/4. Activate only if Surge Engine doesn't have Defender. And then its ultimate form is to pay 4 and 2 blue ultimate. To draw 3 cards. Activate only if Surge Engine is blue and only once.
Yeah, so these are all one-time effects. It's very level-esque.
I like it.
But it's a nice mana sink, and this card, once it's a 5/4 unblockable, is nutty. And you have to deal with it, right?
Yep.
What I do like about it is it doesn't have any kind of hex proof or anything like that. So it's a very interactable card. Mm-hmm. And that's what this was an upgrade from. I can't remember the name of the turtle that I took to CubeCon last year.
Oh, that horrible the Cannoneer.
The Cannoneer. Yeah, Kappa Cannoneer. I put it in my cube. I got beat to death by it.
No joke, man.
This was my upgrade. I wanted a card. It was unblockable too.
I think we warned you about that.
You did. My little brother convinced me, and I was like, all right, whatever, I'll do it. Another card, and I'm going to read some of these off. We'll go into some of them a little bit more, a little bit less. But another construct that you could grab, although unlikely, is Bevy Courier. For 1 colorless, you get an artifact creature construct. Haste. Whenever Bevy Courier attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. And then you can pay red, discard your hand, sacrifice Bevy Courier, put all cards exiled with Bevy Courier into its owner's hand. It's a 1/1. That is a lot of words, and I think I messed that up, but we're going to go with it. Mr. Bombastic. I don't know.
Bevy Courier, yeah. And today I learned it was a construct. I didn't know it was a construct.
It is.
I've used that card in my Power Cube. Not really anymore, but I ran it for a long time. Didn't realize it was a construct. So here we are.
Yeah, so Scrapyard Recombiner, when it ties into these type cards, and that, as Chris just said, he didn't realize this card was a construct. But when you play a card like Scrapyard Recombiner and you look at that secondary ability that it has, then you start looking for a subtype that suddenly reveals itself to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, there are synergies in here. Our good friend Greg's actually tried to build this deck multiple times. He laughingly joked last night, it's the one thing that keeps pulling him in, the one thing he can't win with. But it is there as a utility component. This next one's really cool. Chris, would you mind taking it over, please?
Yeah, it's called Ruin Grinder. For 5 colorless and 1 red for a 6-mana value creature, you get a construct. Big surprise. 7/4 with Menace. And when it dies, each player may discard their hand and draw 7 cards. It also has the ability of mountain cycling too. So a lot of times when I've run this in his artifact cube, it's honestly just been a 2-mana mountain getter.
I would do it with Felden in the third path and bring this sucker back.
It's real good with that, yes.
Yeah,
I agree with that, yes. But it's a really fun card to go get, and putting it in your hand is the important part here, because then you get to decide whether you mountain cycle it or whether you actually cast it. And like you said, if you have a Felden, you're definitely mountain cycling that thing.
And it gives you early game, late game options. That's what I love about the Recombiner.
Mm-hmm. Card works really well with that. I like it a lot.
Now, here's one that I want to talk about that's also a construct that has become, it's going outside. If I wanted to run like an egg strategy, right? Or AKA Bomberman, which gets a little loosey-goosey in here. But Cyberdrive Awakener, for 5 colorless and 1 blue, you get an artifact creature construct. Flying, other artifact creatures you control have flying. When Cyberdrive Awakener enters the battlefield, until the end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power 4/4, and it itself is also a 4/4. This is an overrun effect in an artifact cube. Right. This is amazing. So this is something that I want to tutor up with my Recombiner and put into my hand, and now launch my eggs into 4/4s, etc. Right?
When my what do they call my Urza's Bauble suddenly
becomes
a 4/4 flyer. Yeah, it's great.
It's pretty nutty. It's stuff that you could fetch up. A construct would be like Hangerback Walker, and for XX, you get an artifact creature construct. Hangerback Walker enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it, equal to the number of double times you've paid X, essentially. And when Hangerback Walker dies, put a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying onto the battlefield for each 1/1 counter on Hangerback Walker. And then you can pay 1, tap it, put a 1/1 counter on Hangerback Walker. You could see where something like this, if you got it with a Recombiner, you could fetch it up, cast it, you could stack it to itself, right? Get the Thopters, go get another thing like
Walking Ballista for XX, as with Hangerback Walker. It's an artifact construct, 0/0, but it comes into the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. And you pay 4 to put a +1/+1 counter on Walking Ballista. But the most important part is remove one of those counters to deal 1 damage to any target. And it's a really nice thing to use. You can use it sacrifice to the construct if you want. But it's a way to win the game. This thing can just take over the game if you're able to put counters on it consistently.
So you can see where like Scrapyard Recombiner could chain and have synergies, and that's why it's this advanced signpost that we want to talk about in these environments.
Modular too.
You can see it. That's what I'm talking about. So like with Worm Harvest and with Scrapyard Recombiner, they cross-pollinate into multiple avenues within this cube and with your cube, the Peasant cube, right?
As I said, it creates that web where things just all of a sudden connect up, and it's great.
Yeah, what I don't like as a curator is like isolated lanes for my archetypes.
No,
I don't want them to feel rigid, right? Where once you started drafting this, you have no way out of this lane. Else, you pull, you can't. It won't support itself any further. I want it so, and I also don't want them to be homogenous. So cards like this work really great to be complex signpost or linchpins within that environment that signals players, but also gives them flexibility within their environment. So that would be my recommendation to curators listening, is to always look for cards that allow avenues, it allows creative thought and basically design opportunities for your players, not just the curator.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I don't like it when people put me on rails in any game, to be per se. If I'm playing an RPG or I'm playing a Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, we like to be able to do what we want, and that's what I want the same thing to be in a cube. You want, within reason, of course, within the rules of the game, but be able to do what you want in the environment we are creating.
And another really cool construct, and we've got like Monoscalion, which can go over that, ties into that modular idea, but I'm going to skip right over, speed bump over that one. And we're going to go into the one that people would seek. It's Steel Overseer. And this is one that frequently comes up as a pack one, pick one in my cube. Steel Overseer, for 2 colors, get an artifact creature construct, and that's the thing that we got to pay attention to with that recombiner, right? Is tap, put a 1/1 counter on each artifact creature you control, and it's a 1/1. Mm-hmm. This is how you're going to enable those modular strategies, or, a matter of fact, just big, go wide, go tall strategies, right? And combined with stuff like the hangerback walkers and the walking ballistas, and then tying it in with that scrapyard recombiner, you can see it, because I don't do tutors in my environment.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I do it through nefarious means of something like that.
Well, you're limited. You're not running tutor for any card. You're tutoring for a specific card type to help everything come together.
Yeah, and it's not a replacement card that replaces a card in your deck like a tutor would, right? So I've avoided that outside of in my thematic builds. That's become my kind of design concept, right? Yeah. I do enjoy tutors very much. I just think they become placeholders for the cards in your deck, which they do.
Oh, they are. It means you're running, if you're running Demonic Tutor in here, you're running 2 copies of Steel Overseer, 2 copies of Walking Ballista, 2 copies of whatever.
Right. So whereas something like Scrapyard Recombiner represents the same idea, but it can go fetch the idea that you want. But it's not linear, but it's very archetypical, very driven to its target.
And it's also not free. You have to sacrifice an artifact to do it. You have to play the card plus sacrifice an artifact to do it. So it's not 100%. But it still works really well, say, with the next card that we have displayed now.
Cathodian.
Yeah.
One of my favorite words to say.
It's a card that really wants to die, and I love the art on it. It's a 3 mana value construct, 3/3. So good stats on right there, just for a 3/3 for 3. And when it dies, add 3 colors to your pool. And works really well. It's a really good sack outlet, really good creature to sacrifice to
Scrapyard Recombiner. We've had a hard time with this word today, folks. It's been fun.
Why. I do not know why.
It's not as easy. It doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah, Worm Harvest is a little easier to remember.
It
It
is.
is my cube.
It is true. I'll allow it.
But yeah, Cathodian works really well. Because then what you can do is you sack the Cathodian to your Scrapyard Recombiner to go grab a Chief of the Foundry. And, cost 3. Use that 3 mana value to put Chief of the Foundry in your hand, cast it for 3. All your artifacts get +1/+1.
I want everybody listening right now to stop, pinch your tongues, and say Custodian. And
Custodian? Did I say Custodian?
It's Cathodian.
Oh, Lord.
Sorry, I'm having too much fun.
You are. That's all right.
So some other
That's
ones.
What we want to do.
Cathodian showed up to work to go die, so we got that much.
Cathodian.
So Cathodian.
Poor guy.
And then you got Chief of the Foundry, which is other artifact creatures you get +1/+1 as a construct. Then you got Foundry Inspector, which reduces the cost of your artifacts that you cast. But then you get into some cool stuff. We're starting to get into. It's not quite that KCI combo, but we're on the edge. Would you mind taking on that one, please?
Yeah, the Scrap Trawler, also another 3 mana value. That's a theme going on here. 3 mana value for a 3/2 artifact construct. Of course, these are all artifacts. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser converted mana cost or mana value. This thing, if you have this on the field with your Recombiner, you're going to get a lot of stuff back. You're just going to be able to cycle through and get all the constructs out of your deck when you get this thing.
You can do a lot of value add with this card. Yeah, so there's some chain. That's what I like about it. There's chaining to be done, but it's advanced, and you got to stay on top of it. But also in this particular environment, Umber Bear's Artifact Cube, artifacts are never safe.
Well, of course not. It's because you have the Green Menace.
I do. Green and white represent the control.
Green and white are the menace. Oh, I don't like it when someone's playing Selesnya against me and I'm playing this.
So what was really cool is during CubeCon Part 1, Sam Black actually drafted this cube. And when Stu went up and talked to him afterwards, and he asked him what would he had done different, and he said drafted Selesnya.
Oh, yeah. It's still strong. It's not as strong.
I have tapered it, but I have toned it down.
But man, it used to be you run that, you're not going to keep your artifacts for very long. So you might as well just, it was bad.
Yeah, that's one of those difficult balancing things, right? Because the original design of this cube was artifact versus anti-artifact. But then I had to watch that tilt, right? Then you couldn't. Armies must march forward is kind of how I've grown as a curator, as have you.
Have you cut Bane of Progress finally?
I did.
Thank God.
I love it, but I cut Bane of Progress.
Thank God you cut Bane of Progress.
It was gone. So we got one more Scrapyard Brawler, and for 6 colorless, you get a Flying Vigilance, Trample Lifelink construct, 4/4. Woof, that's a lot of words. And for 5, exile Scavenge Brawler from your graveyard, choose target creature, put 4 1/1 counters, a flying counter, a vigilance counter, a trample counter, and a lifelink counter on that creature. Activate only as a sorcery. Let's start right here. I don't have any of those counters, and nor will I have them.
I don't
probably.
either. I have none. I have plus one counters. I have those.
I probably have those little punch outs from Wizards of the Coast when they made them. But yeah. So this is one of those cards that when you sacrificed it, you would put it into your graveyard and you could do some shenanigans here, right? Based on attacks. And it wasn't working out for you. Scrapyard Recombiner could help you get some more and or fetch this, right?
It turns another one into another version of itself. It turns like a Thopter into a 5/5 version of itself.
Even better, you could put it on this. It's not Cathodian, but you could put it on this.
Oh, one of my favorites, Scuttling Doom Engine. I love to use this with Feldon. Oh my goodness,
it's disgusting.
It's a 6 mana value construct, 6/6. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And when it dies, deals 6 damage to target opponent. Just take 6.
You gotta kind of deal with it.
And if I kill it, because I'll probably sacrifice it, you're taking another 6.
It's cards like this is the why I run the Path to Exiles.
Of course.
I mean, I kind of have to, even though they're super efficient. It's just this card would give you no out. You're going to take 6 no matter what. Probably taking 12. Yeah. So I have to make some decisions as a curator. Normally, I want my removal to be a little tighter, but I decided to make my removal very strong in this environment because if you're going to do a naturalized effect on that, you're going to get punished for it.
Yeah, you have to.
You're making some serious
decisions. Same thing with the Brawler, the one we just talked about. You have to exile that, or else they're going to get this huge value out of it.
Yeah. So, and then we've got a few more here, and we're kind of moving along. We're going by namesake here at this point. You know what? A construct is Scrapyard Recombiner, nor would it fetch itself. But if you had these, you could chain it theoretically in your cubes if you broke Singleton. Peace Strider and Peace Strider and Pierce Strider. Peace and Pierce. One gains you 3 life, the other one loses 3 life. Those are neat ones. Yep. They're cute. They're good little sack ones you can do back and forth, a little bit of life gain. And then you got this next one that's a construct. And as you're listening to this, folks, can you believe there's so many constructs at this point? I mean, you got to be a little taken back because you never even noticed, right?
I didn't. No.
No one notices.
I never paid attention to constructs ever. And this next one, the Kodaltha Forge Master, is one of the big granddaddy of them. He's been around a while for 5 mana value, 3/5. This is one of your tutors, but it does cost you. It costs you 3 artifacts to search your library for an artifact card and put it onto the battlefield. So you can use that to go fetch out your Scrapyard Recombiner if you want.
And get some nutty chains going here, right?
Yes, you can. There's a lot of things. And the cool part is you can sacrifice itself to it as well if you only have 2 other artifacts. So that also works. It's just a really cool card. Some people even run this in their power cube, if they want. I don't think I've ever run it in my power cube.
And then we got our traditional beater that you can seek out with Scrapyard Recombiner. That'd be Mirror Battle Spear, right? I mean, that's kind of known to the community at this point. It's the mirror construct, 4/7. It makes a whole bunch of mirrors, beats them to death. We know the rules on this one. But I want to talk about this one card. This one card.
Favorite.
It's a favorite of Chris's. Actually, I want you to talk about, but I'm going to prelude it. I want to prelude this because we're going to kind of come to the end here on this idea. This card I saw do more work than anything else in my cube. It shocked me. I thought this card was antiquated. I'm not going to lie to you. And I saw people getting killed with this card. Would you mind taking it away from here, please?
Yeah, it's a favorite of mine. An old antiquities card, Triskelion, 6 mana value for a 1/1. But when it comes into play, put 3 1/1 counters on it, and you just remove a counter, deal a damage to any target. And this card is fantastic. It's just, I even have an old antiquities version of it. I actually went out and sought that out a long time ago because I love this card. And I love the goofy old Douglas Schuler art, I believe is what his name is.
It is, and it makes me actually think about it.
Goofy art.
Actually thinking about it too because it doesn't say construct on it. I might have to unfortunately update it
That's
because
fine,
people wouldn't know to fetch it.
It is a construct, but you have to have it on the card for people to know it, and that makes sense.
Yeah, and I hate to do that, but
the new art's nice too. I like the new art as well.
Maybe I can just pencil in with a Sharpie.
I always
construct.
just pictured the old art where he's just flinging his arms at things, and that
yeah, for consideration for CubeCon. I just caught this one on the fly. This is an on-the-fly call, but I wouldn't know to fetch that. But you can see the kind of the point of this episode that we've been talking about is with Worm Harvest, Chris's Peasant Cube, and with Scrapyard Recombiner, Uberbear's Artifact Cube, or aka Sammich's, Peasant Cube, pardons, is that they're very unique, very robust signposts. They allow you to go multi-directional, right?
Absolutely.
And you can do a lot. You can branch out. Those archetypes are not on rails, as we talked about. Chris, do you have any thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, and again, that's what I like about it, is the fact that it isn't just something where you're locked into you're just going to make worms. That's all you're going to do. That's not true. You can do so much other things. There's so many other things you can do with Worm Harvest. You can use those worms as sacrifice fodder for your Aristocrats deck. You can use them to attack in an overrun strategy. There's so many different things that you can do with them, and it just makes it really fun. And that's what I like about it. And I've definitely first picked this card and done really well with it. And people just will let it go because they don't see the value in it. So you get it late in the draft sometimes too. Although I don't know if people in my group will get it after this podcast. But
probably not. Probably not. No.
I probably won't
it.
ever be able to play that card ever again. But it makes it really fun to play when it's like that. I like it when you're not locked in. And the same thing with the constructs in Anthony's cube, in Anthony's Scrapyard Recombiner. I really like you have to build all constructs. You really only need a few constructs to make that thing valuable.
Right.
You really don't need 10 constructs. You don't need to draft all your constructs.
You could build faction constructs. It's going to cost you 40 million mana, but you could do it.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I more so recommend just drafting that, a bunch of little artifacts and a few big payoffs, and that would do it. That's a deck.
And using the Scrapyard Recombiner as a utility portion.
Absolutely.
At tutor, even go get Kadolthra to tutor more. You can do some nutty stuff
There's
here,
some
right?
Really fun stuff.
And then tie into that Awakener, wake those eggs up.
Oh my God! Yes.
Overrun kills. You see, the strategies are very advanced. That's what I love so much about both these environments. Peasant cubes are. I want to hype this Peasant cube. His Peasant cube not only is foiled out and absolutely gorgeous, but it's robust. I mean, what are some of the archetypes you run in that?
Oh, I run like aristocrats. There's flyers. There's the graveyard synergies. There's oh gosh, I'm sorry. There's a blink archetype. There's even the persist combos. That's even a little fun thing to try to get done on that thing. It's really not super easy to do, but there's big ramp. There's tempo. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this. There's control decks. Wraths aren't as plentiful in this, but they do exist. Also, this is a cube where Whirler Rogue is amazing. It's like your 4 drops. 3 and 4 and 5 drops are really where it's at, and I've had to work hard to make aggro work actually, but that's been the tough part. But aggro does do very well in this cube. I've tried to make that a thing.
And we're going to continue to do more deep dives into the Peasant world as we move along, because we've noticed that the Peasant cube audience, we got good feedback from the first episode that Chris was in talking about it. And we just see opportunities to talk about more thoroughly the archetypes embedded within. But today we wanted to focus on these 2 cards, Worm Harvest and Scrapyard Recombiner, as the highlight pieces of the advanced strategies for advanced Signpost, and how you as a curator should really look at cards that act as the glue for multiple archetypes to pull them together if you can, opposed to singular lanes, something that only points one direction. Players will really appreciate, as May has said, aha moment, right?
Absolutely.
That's what your drafters are looking for, is the ahas. They want to feel like that they're engaged, and maybe, just maybe, they found a treasure within your environment that you as a curator has to go, yeah, I knew that was there. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
and it's
I'm like, totally. I totally put that in there on purpose. Yes,
and that is the best feeling in the world to have players discover new avenues, because you had cards embedded in there that had so much versatility, right? They were robust and they were tangible and malleable, that they could actually move into other archetypes. But other than that, this has been a fantastic show, Chris. I just want to tell you thank you for joining us again.
I appreciate having me on the show.
I really look forward to finding out if your cube gets voted on. I would love to see it as a featured cube.
Yeah, and if it is, great. If
it's not,
that's fine too.
Come find us. We'll still be playing it.
Yeah, we'll still have
We're
fun.
still
I'm
doing
not worried
it.
about it.
And so you're going up next Wednesday, and I'm going up next Friday when this episode rolls out. I push these out on Mondays, so look out for my boy Chris here. So he's done hard work. He's the one that got me. He's the one that actually, if anybody likes my cube designs, typically it's Chris made it good.
Yeah, he usually consults me early on, but he does the fine tuning and gets them to where they're at. So he gets a lot of credit for this. It's not just
Well, I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you. Yeah. And we're going to go ahead and move over to our socials. If you love the show, we would truly appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite player. UberCube is an affiliate with Alter Sleeves. You can use our code for 5% off your purchase. That will be included in the show notes, but basically altersleeves.com/UberCube. Really love Alter Sleeves. I think Chris and I are going to bling out some. Chris, you got some Alter Sleeves.
Oh, absolutely. I bought some actually because of this recently. Yeah.
And if you want to support the show, please use our Ink Gaming affiliate. I've actually got to get some more mats for the team here. We need to talk about that too. We had our UberCube mats made last year. We're working on that too. I love Ink Gaming. If you ever just want to make a custom mat, or you want to make one of those oversized mats for your table, regardless of UberCube or not, I highly, highly, highly recommend UberCube, or highly, highly recommend Ink Gaming and UberCube.
I recommend it too.
Other than that, you can find us at Twitter at UberCubeMTGPod. You can reach us at UberCubeMTGPodcast at gmail.com. You can link us on Discord, #UberCube. We also have a Patreon. Chris, tell us how the Patreon's going.
I have no clue. How is the Patreon going?
Exactly. Other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is Happy Cubing!